I am Valeria Mendez, born on March 14, 1987, in Oaxaca, Mexico. And I was raised inside a house where spirits were feared more than God and money was hunted through rituals. I am not sharing a story I heard. I am confessing what I personally did as a witch assigned to sabotage the finances of praying believers who thought their fasting alone protected them. I carried out spiritual operations against business owners, pastors, tithers, and faithful workers, and we targeted their money because we knew financial pressure weakens faith faster than persecution ever could. If you feel constant financial blockage, unexplained losses, sudden debt, or profits vanishing after breakthroughs, this message is not coincidence, it is exposure. Like this video now, comment with authority, share it with urgency, and watch until the very end, because what I am about to reveal are 4 judgment prayers that dismantle the altars witches use against your money. Do not scroll away. Hidden operations are being exposed. A prophetic awakening is happening. And what you are about to hear was once forbidden knowledge. The first thing you must understand is this: witches do not attack money directly. We attack the altar connected to it. When I was initiated, I was taught that every believer who gives, builds, saves, or prospers creates a spiritual altar, whether they know it or not. Your obedience builds an altar. Your tithe builds an altar. Your thanksgiving builds an altar. And that altar speaks. So our assignment was simple: silence it. I remember one particular operation. A Christian businessman had just secured a contract that would change his life. He prayed. He fasted. He thanked God publicly. That thanksgiving became a threat. We gathered at midnight, not to curse his bank account, but to raise a counter altar, because altars negotiate in the spirit. We wrote his name. We invoked spirits of delay. We declared cycles of loss. We offered sacrifices to enforce stagnation. Within weeks, payments were delayed. Unexpected repairs appeared. Trusted partners withdrew. He blamed the economy, but it was an altar speaking against him. You must understand something critical, which is respect spiritual law. We knew that as long as his altar of obedience was louder than ours, we could not prevail. So we aimed to exhaust him. Financial warfare is psychological warfare. Delay, pressure, embarrassment, unexpected bills. If we could make him complain long enough, his own words would weaken his altar. And when believers start saying, "Why is God not helping me?" that doubt becomes permission. Listen carefully. The first judgment prayer that destroys every witch attacking your money is this: you must command fire against every evil altar speaking against your financial destiny. Not beg, command, because altars respond to authority. When I left witchcraft, I was terrified of one kind of prayer: judgment prayers spoken with conviction. Not emotional shouting, legal authority. I once witnessed a woman pray after discovering unusual financial attacks. She said, "Every altar raised against my provision, catch fire and collapse in the name of Jesus." She did not repeat it 20 times. She declared it once with authority. That week, the ritual we performed against her business failed. Our offerings spoiled. Candles would not stay lit. Divination became blurred. That is not coincidence. That is altar collision. You see, when you pray judgment over evil altars, you are not attacking people. You are dismantling structures. And structures are what empower witches. Many believers make a mistake. They pray for money, but they never confront the altar blocking it. It is like pouring water into a leaking container. The first battle is structural. When an altar collapses, financial flow restores naturally. Let me warn you, when you pray against financial altars, resistance may intensify briefly. Unexpected tension, strange dreams, sudden discouragement. That is backlash from dismantled systems. Do not panic. Stand firm. Because once an altar falls, it cannot rebuild without renewed sacrifice. And here is something I rarely say publicly. Most witchcraft attacks on finances operate on cycles. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Cycles of harvest interruption. We used calendars. We tracked seasons. But judgment prayers break cycles permanently. They reset spiritual calendars. You must say, "Every evil altar enforcing financial cycles in my life, I judge you by fire." Collapse permanently. Say it with awareness. Say it with conviction. Do not whisper it like a request. Speak it like a verdict, because in the spirit realm, verdicts carry weight. There was a pastor whose ministry was expanding rapidly. His church began funding missions globally. That expansion threatened territorial spirits. We were assigned to restrict the flow. Instead of attacking attendance, we attacked giving. Members suddenly faced emergencies. Key donors lost contracts. Project stalled, but something unusual happened. The pastor began leading corporate judgment prayers against unseen altars. Within months, not only did giving recover, it multiplied. We lost access. That is the power of dismantled altars. Understand this deeply. Money is not just currency, it is momentum. When witches attack your finances, they are attacking your momentum, your generosity, your influence. But judgment prayer restores spiritual dominance. Do not be afraid of the word judgment. Heaven has courts, heaven has justice. When you align with divine authority, you are not acting in aggression, you are enforcing righteousness. And witches fear righteous enforcement. I feared it. Because when a believer understands their authority, witchcraft loses intimidation power. You must stop reacting emotionally to financial pressure. React spiritually. The moment you notice repeated patterns, contracts collapsing, payments stalling, unexplained loss, do not just budget harder. Pray structurally. Target the altar. Speak fire. Declare collapse. Seal it with authority. And do not apologize for it, because witches never apologize for attacking you. You must confront what confronts you. And when the first altar falls, momentum shifts. That is when breakthrough begins. That is when peace returns. That is when provision stabilizes. But this is only the first layer. There are deeper operations, deeper strategies. And the next judgment prayer targets something even more dangerous than altars. There is something more dangerous than an altar: surveillance. Before we attacked anyone's money, we watched them. We studied patterns, promotion seasons, contract negotiations, loan approvals, investment discussions, travel plans connected to business. Nothing was random. Witchcraft is strategic. When I was inside, we called them monitoring spirits, assigned entities that track progress. They do not steal immediately, they observe. They wait for peak moments. The worst financial collapses I witnessed did not happen in poverty seasons. They happened right before expansion, right before approval, right before celebration. Because disruption is most devastating at the edge of breakthrough. I remember a woman who was about to receive inheritance funds. She had prayed for years. She fasted. She sowed seeds faithfully. But what she did not know was this: her name had been placed under surveillance. We tracked every legal movement connected to that inheritance. We whispered confusion into relatives. We stirred paperwork delays. We triggered arguments, not by accident, by monitoring. Many of you watching this have experienced something similar. You share good news. Suddenly complications arise. You sign a contract. Unexpected clauses appear. You receive promotion. Sudden conflict with supervisors. That is not always coincidence. Sometimes it is surveillance. And the second judgment prayer that destroys witches attacking your money is this: you must command blindness and destruction against every monitoring spirit assigned to your finances. When I left witchcraft, I realized something terrifying. Monitoring spirits fear exposure more than confrontation. The moment a believer becomes aware and prays specifically against surveillance, operations weaken. Because hidden activity thrives in ignorance, but exposure disrupts coordination. I once witnessed a businessman who began praying, "Every spirit monitoring my financial progress be blinded and removed in the name of Jesus." He prayed it consistently, calmly, authoritatively. Within weeks, our divination readings about him became inconsistent. We could not see clearly anymore. Strategies failed. It felt like fog had entered the spiritual atmosphere around him. That fog was divine interference. You must understand something. Not every attack is a curse. Some attacks are information leaks. Witches move based on data. Your excitement can become data. Your public announcements can become data. You're careless. Conversations can become data. I am not telling you to live in fear. I am telling you to live with discernment. The second prayer is about shutting down illegal access. Say it like this: every eye monitoring my financial destiny be blinded. Every spirit assigned to track my progress be removed permanently. Speak it with authority, not panic, because authority shifts atmospheres. There was a pastor whose church was about to purchase property. We tracked the negotiations for months. Every time a price was agreed upon, unexpected legal obstacles appeared. Every time progress resumed, new complications emerged. It was orchestrated delay, but something changed. He began praying specifically against monitoring spirits. He stopped announcing negotiations prematurely. He moved in quiet obedience. And suddenly the deal finalized smoothly. No resistance, no confusion. Why? Because surveillance had been interrupted. You must hear this carefully. When surveillance ends, sabotage weakens. because witches cannot effectively attack what they cannot track. Another truth most believers ignore: dream infiltration is a monitoring tool. If you constantly dream about counting money that disappears, if you dream of being chased when you are close to success, if you dream of signing papers that dissolve, that is spiritual tracking. When I was inside, dreams were entry points. We planted imagery to cause fear and doubt. Fear produces hesitation. Hesitation delays action. Delay kills momentum. The second judgment prayer must also include dream enforcement. You must declare, every spirit accessing my life through dreams to monitor my finances, be cut off permanently. Speak it boldly, because once dream access is blocked, tracking becomes unstable. And here is something that shocked me when I left witchcraft. Many attacks are reactive. Witches do not always initiate. Sometimes they respond to your growth. Your promotion provokes reaction. Your generosity provokes reaction. Your influence provokes reaction. So when financial attacks intensify after breakthrough, do not assume you failed. Sometimes you threaten darkness. But the moment you enforce blindness over monitoring spirits, power shifts, because darkness depends on visibility. Light disrupts illegal observation. You must also practice strategic silence. When I say silence, I mean spiritual maturity. Not everything requires announcement. Not every testimony requires early exposure. Let results speak. Let contracts finalize before celebration. Let investments mature before disclosure. Because wisdom is also warfare, but never operate in paranoia. Operate in authority. There is a difference. Paranoia assumes defeat. Authority enforces dominion. You are not a victim under surveillance. You are a ruler confronting illegal access. And when you pray against monitoring spirits, something shifts internally. Confidence returns. Clarity sharpens. Decisions become precise. Because interference reduces. Remember this: altars block. Monitoring spirits coordinate. Both must be confronted. And when surveillance collapses, the next layer of attack becomes visible. There is something even more dangerous than altars and monitoring spirits, something that manipulates agreement, something that empowers witches legally. And the third judgment prayer deals with that hidden structure. There is a level of attack that is deeper than altars, deeper than monitoring spirits. Covenants. When I was inside witchcraft, we did not waste power attacking people randomly. We searched for legal access, agreement. Because witchcraft without agreement is weak. But witchcraft with agreement becomes enforceable. You must understand this clearly. Many financial attacks are not sustained by curses. They are sustained by covenants. Some are ancestral, some are spoken carelessly, some are entered through desperation, and some are activated through fear. I remember one of the first financial assignments I ever participated in. It involved a man who constantly declared, "Money never stays with me. In my family, we always struggle." He thought he was stating a fact, but in the spirit realm, he was reinforcing a covenant. We didn't need to build a new altar against him. His words renewed an old one. Within months, every business he touched collapsed. Loans defaulted. Opportunities vanished. And he said, "This is just my luck." It was not luck. It was agreement. You must hear me carefully. Witches look for inherited patterns, repeated bankruptcies in a bloodline, chronic debt cycles, businesses that start strong but collapse suddenly, sudden losses after progress. Those patterns are not random. They often point to ancestral covenants tied to wealth exchange with darkness. In some bloodlines, wealth was gained through occult dedication generations ago. When that covenant is not broken, financial sabotage becomes cyclical. I once attended a midnight ritual where an entire family line was discussed, not because they were evil, but because an ancestor had entered into a pact for prosperity. That pact demanded generational balance, meaning wealth would always be unstable, rise and fall, rise and fall. That instability created fear. Fear created renewed agreement. Agreement sustained access. The third judgment prayer destroys these covenants, not emotionally, legally. You must declare, "Every evil covenant speaking against my financial destiny, I renounce you. I revoke you. I break you permanently." Say it with consciousness, because renunciation removes consent, and witches fear revoked consent. When I left witchcraft, I watched a woman confront generational poverty in her bloodline. She stopped saying, "This is how my family is." Instead, she declared, "I disconnect from every ancestral agreement with poverty and instability." That language was dangerous to darkness. Within a year, she stabilized financially in ways her family had never experienced. Because covenant was revoked, let me reveal. something even deeper. Not all covenants are ancestral, some are personal. Have you ever said in frustration, I will do anything to succeed? In the spirit realm, anything is an open contract. Have you ever vowed, if this business works, I will never depend on anyone again? That vow can become pride-based covenant. Witchcraft thrives on unguarded vows, because vows are spiritual signatures. And when desperation meets ambition, agreements can form invisibly. The third judgment prayer must be specific. You must break ancestral financial covenants, spoken self-sabotaging vows, agreements made in fear, contracts formed in desperation. Say it clearly. Every covenant formed knowingly or unknowingly that empowers financial attack in my life, I break you by authority. Authority is critical because covenant responds to jurisdiction. And if you do not assert jurisdiction, patterns remain. I remember a businessman who struggled with sudden losses after every major success. He was generous, faithful, disciplined, but patterns persisted. During spiritual counseling, he realized he had once vowed in anger, money is the root of evil. I don't even care about wealth. That statement became a spiritual contradiction. He desired prosperity but verbally rejected it. That contradiction created loophole access. After renouncing that vow and declaring alignment with divine provision, patterns shifted. Because covenant had been corrected, you must understand something else. Covenants empower timing. When a covenant is active, attacks activate predictably. Every time you approach expansion, resistance surfaces. Every time you attempt investment, obstacles multiply. That is covenant enforcement. And judgment prayer interrupts enforcement, not gently, decisively. You must not whisper this prayer. You must speak like someone reclaiming territory. Because that is exactly what you are doing. Reclaiming financial jurisdiction. There was a woman whose family experienced repeated business fires across generations. It sounded like coincidence, until we traced the pattern inside witchcraft circles. An ancestor had entered a wealth for protection pact involving fire symbolism. Every generation experienced literal fire disruption in commerce. When she broke that covenant through deliberate renunciation, the cycle stopped. No more fires, no more mysterious losses, because agreement ended. You must never underestimate the power of renunciation. Witches cannot legally enforce what you have legally revoked. Once covenant is broken, altars weaken automatically. Monitoring spirits lose justification, and financial stability becomes sustainable. But listen carefully. There is one final layer, the most subtle one. It is not external, it is internal. And it determines whether breakthroughs remain or collapse again. The fourth judgment prayer addresses that final barrier. This is the part most believers do not want to hear. Not every financial attack remains external. Sometimes, after altars are destroyed, after monitoring spirits are blinded, after covenants are broken, the final access point is inside you. When I was deep in witchcraft, we were trained to look for internal doors: fear, greed, chronic anxiety, unforgiveness, dishonor toward God. Because if we could not attack from outside, we amplified what was inside. You must understand this clearly. Witchcraft does not create weaknesses, it magnifies them. If a believer fears loss constantly, we magnify fear until they make reckless decisions. If a believer secretly doubts they deserve prosperity, we amplify self-sabotage. If a believer resents giving, we magnify bitterness until generosity dries up. And when generosity dries up, protection weakens. There was a businessman whose altars had collapsed. We tried to re-establish surveillance. It failed. We looked for covenants. He had renounced them, so we shifted strategy. We studied his emotional triggers. He feared betrayal. So we orchestrated small disappointments in partnerships. Nothing major, just enough to stir suspicion. Suspicion turned into distrust. Distrust turned into isolation. Isolation led him to reject wise counsel. And within a year, poor decisions, not curses, destabilized his finances. That is internal warfare. The fourth judgment prayer destroys internal doors that empower attack. You must declare, every internal weakness empowering financial sabotage, I confront you. I shut you down. I align myself with truth, not ignore this prayer. Because authority without alignment becomes unstable. When I left witchcraft, I learned something that shook me. The strongest believers we could not touch were not perfect. They were aligned. Their hearts were clean. Their motives were purified. They gave without fear. They saved without greed. They prospered without arrogance. Internal integrity became spiritual armor. Witches cannot manipulate what is surrendered to God, but they can amplify what is hidden. If you secretly believe wealth will corrupt you, you will unconsciously repel it. If you believe success will cost you relationships, you will sabotage opportunity. And then you will blame witches for what fear produced. I am speaking with urgency because I saw this repeatedly. We rarely needed to destroy stable believers. We only needed to introduce pressure and wait for internal cracks. That is why the fourth prayer must include self-examination, not condemnation. Examination. Ask yourself, do I panic when money fluctuates? Do I speak negatively when pressure rises? Do I resent generosity during hardship? Those reactions create micro-agreements, and micro-agreements create access. You must say every fear-based mindset, every scarcity mentality, every hidden resentment toward provision, I uproot you now. Speak it boldly, because mindset affects momentum. I remember a woman whose business income doubled, but her fear doubled with it. She constantly expected collapse. That expectation influenced her decisions. She withdrew investments prematurely. She rejected expansion opportunities. She hoarded resources instead of stewarding them. Within months, growth stalled, not because witches attacked, but because fear sabotaged flow. We simply amplified her anxiety. That is the painful truth. The fourth judgment prayer reclaims internal territory. You must declare, my heart will not cooperate with financial destruction. My mind will not empower sabotage. My spirit aligns with abundance under divine authority. Alignment closes doors, and when internal doors close, external attacks lose leverage. There is another internal door that is extremely dangerous: pride. When believers experience breakthrough, pride whispers, you did this yourself. The moment credit shifts from God to self, covering thins, and witchcraft looks for uncovered ground. Humility is not weakness, it is insulation. The most untouchable believers I observed were radically grateful, not performative, genuine. Gratitude reinforces protection, because gratitude keeps you aligned with the source of provision. The fourth prayer must also include humility. Say, I reject pride, I reject fear, I reject greed, I choose obedience and stewardship. That declaration seals territory. And when territory is sealed, sustainability follows. Financial breakthrough without internal alignment is temporary. But breakthrough with alignment becomes legacy. I am not speaking theory. I am confessing strategy. Were the layers we studied. Altars, surveillance, internal doors. When all four are confronted, witchcraft collapses. Not gradually, completely. And that is why many of you are experiencing this message right now. Because awareness precedes authority, and authority precedes breakthrough. You are not helpless. You were never powerless. You were simply uninformed, but now you know. And knowledge enforces dominion. You have now heard what was once hidden inside dark rooms and midnight rituals, and you are no longer spiritually blind to financial warfare. You are not a victim of cycles, delay, or sabotage. You are authorized to judge every altar, blind every monitoring spirit, break every covenant, and shut every internal door. If you have watched until this very end, you did not arrive here by accident. You were meant to receive this activation. Comment with boldness, share this urgently, and do not keep this revelation to yourself because someone else is fighting silently. Stand up in authority. Speak with conviction. Enforce what you have learned. Your money will not be hijacked. Your destiny will not be delayed. Your breakthrough will not be reversed. This ends now.